Retirement income planning leads a lot of people to many questions, and they're looking for answers right here on YouTube University. Jake and I here today are going to actually answer 3 comments and 3 of the questions that we've gotten in the comments here as of late that all have to do with retirement income planning, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you have additional questions, comment them down below, and maybe we'll answer them in a future episode. If this is your first time watching, I'm Kyle Kuyat, co-founder of Defining Wealth and of Retirement Redefined, here on the show with my main man, Jake. Jake, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. It's going to be a fun one.
It is. It is. And we love whenever you guys give us comments. We have a lot of conversations with a lot of you, but some of you like to leave a comment, and we appreciate that. And again, we like to do these Q&A episodes. In fact, we're even toying around the idea of doing this live at some point. But for now, let's make sure that we answer these questions. The first one, it comes from Donnie Walker. And this was the other day when we had a video about maximizing your spending in retirement, which, hey, for a lot of you that reach out to us, that's exactly what it is you want to do. So Jake, Donnie said, hey guys, great video, but I'm still alive with a few questions about guardrails. If I use the guardrail approach, how do I set my starting percentage in upper and lower rails? If I hit the upper rail, do I reduce to the lower? Do I change the dollar value for each rail if my portfolio value changes? Maybe I'm missing something, but what I see so far in guardrails is ultimately an effort to keep my portfolio value relatively constant. Is that right? Thanks in advance to anyone with further insight. Well, Donnie, you're welcome in advance. We're going to give you the answer to this question at least as best as we can. Jake, I've talked ad nauseum for the last 90 seconds. I'll let you fire away and I'll join in with you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question. I'm going to address the end of this question first because that's, I think, the easiest one to address right off the top, and just say the guardrail approach is not necessarily to keep your portfolio value constant. There's nothing you can do short of just keeping money in cash to keep your portfolio value constant because the market is constantly going to be moving. The idea behind withdrawal guardrails is to make sure you stay within a relatively safe withdrawal situation. Situation is probably the wrong word for that. Zone is probably a better word. So we're trying to keep our withdrawals at a sustainable level, and we're using guardrails around how much we take as a percentage of our portfolio to make that happen. We have very little control over the balance of our actual portfolio if we're invested for the long term in the markets. Now, there's a couple other questions within this question. So how do I set my initial withdrawal rate? What are the upper and lower guardrails, and how does that interact with the dollar amounts that I'm pulling out every year? I'm going to walk through a quick example to answer this question, and then maybe we can have a quick discussion about it too.
Sure.
But let's say we have a beginning investment balance of $1 million, and we set our initial withdrawal rate at 5.5%. There's a study out there, Guyton-Klinger guardrail method. I think we can probably link that in the show notes. But again, let's use that method to walk through an example here with $1 million and an initial withdrawal of 5.5%. If the withdrawal rate increases, that means your portfolio went down in value. That's an inverse relationship. So the portfolio goes down. In this case, we're going to say $833,000 roughly. And your portfolio withdrawal rate increases. Again, your rate goes up if your portfolio value goes down. If that increases by 20% to 6.6%, then we need to take a reduction in the dollar amount that we're pulling out of the portfolio. So instead of taking $55,000 off of $1 million, we're going to take $49,500 off of $833,000. That is a 10% reduction in the withdrawal rate after the rate increases 20% or more. If your portfolio goes up in value and your withdrawal rate goes down, you can then give yourself a 10% raise. The way this math works out is if we get to 1.25 million in the portfolio and our withdrawal rate goes down to 4.4%, we can then give ourselves a 10% raise for a $60,500 withdrawal instead of a $55,000 withdrawal. I know that's a lot of numbers. Maybe we should probably put a graphic up with this part of the conversation.
We will. Yeah.
But this is roughly speaking how a withdrawal guardrail method would work. And again, it's not to keep that investment balance stable or steady. We have very little control over that, but it is a method to keep our withdrawals within a certain zone as a percentage of our portfolio.
Yeah, I think ultimately, if done right, it protects you when you need protection, but it also allows you to spend more when you can. I think that's the fundamental basis for implementing a guardrail strategy and having it work to your advantage in retirement.
Yeah. I mean, they literally in the study call it the abundance rule when you're able to take more money out. So it's, the method works, generally speaking. You need to be flexible with how much you're going to spend in retirement, or at least flexible enough within certain parameters. But that's a good question, and I'm glad Donnie asked it, because that is a little bit of a confusing topic.
Yeah, you don't want to throw a gutter ball in retirement. All right. Sorry, I can't help myself. So the next question here is from NZ, actually on the same video that we had the other day. NZ says, hey guys, the only way I feel comfortable spending money is when I just spend the dividends and distributions from the assets that I'm holding without selling any shares or units. If you can receive about $70,000 a year from this method without reducing number of assets, then I would feel comfortable. I think he's referencing, and again, we were talking about how to spend more in retirement. But NZ here, Jake, is largely, it sounds like, living off of dividends for his retirement income and is just uncomfortable spending his principal. Now, that's not foreign. I think there's a lot of people that will reach out to us, and just people in general. Human nature is like, hey, income makes people happy. I say it all the time. And it's not just me spewing that out. I mean, just from experience, a lot of people are like UNZ, where they say, hey, I've saved this money all these years. I'm used to my balance going up and up and up. And a lot of people are terrified to spend their money, which in reality, I understand the premise of it, but a lot of times it's preventing people from being able to actually enjoy that. But let's focus on a couple of things here. I know we had an episode the other day about dividends, and NZ, if you're looking for a deep dive on dividends and retirement income spending with dividends, we have that. We'll link that here somewhere too. But Jake, let's answer NZ's question here and maybe give him or her some additional insights as far as maybe how they can maybe break through some of those mental hurdles.
Yeah, for sure. First off, on the gut and cleaner stuff, prosperity, not abundance. I'm going to correct that for the record right here before we
they both sounded good.
Yeah, that's same idea, different word. So NZ, $70,000 a year from a dividend and distribution portfolio. Let's say we have a 5% dividend yield, which is high, but let's just say it's 5%. That means we need a $1.4 million portfolio kicking off $70,000 a year. And oh, by the way, if it's in a retirement account, like a pre-tax retirement account, we're going to have to account for the fact that there are taxes when that money comes out. So it can be parked in cash, but then you have to distribute it from your IRA or 401k, which is what most people are retiring with. And then we have to account for the fact we probably need 20-ish% more for taxes at that point to get to about 70,000 net. So it's not, again, that's fine if you want to set it up that way. And that's a pushback that we hear from a lot of people, or at least an idea that we hear from a lot of folks, is it's uncomfortable living off of principal or what I've saved up. But again, if we don't have a $1.4 million portfolio and we're expecting a 5% dividend yield, which again, I think is pretty aggressive, but I'm just trying to use a round number here. We need to have that built up in a brokerage account, get qualified dividend treatment, and be pretty confident that we can just live off that forever.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to consider there, and I've mentioned it many times here before. It's the retirement Rubik's Cube, right? I think on the surface, that strategy can seem simple. It can seem safe, but there's a lot of trade-offs and repercussions if things change, which they're bound to in retirement. So just something to consider as you're doing it.
And don't forget, there's other income sources for most people too. I don't know NZ's situation, but Social Security has a part to play in that picture eventually. There's a lot of different ways to get an income of $70,000 a year in retirement, depending on how you're willing to set that up. So, certainly dividend investing is one way to do it. If we have a 5% yield, you have to build up a pretty sizable taxable brokerage account, or even more dollars in a pre-tax account. So something to acknowledge there.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Our last question comes from Roger Scott. Roger Scott says, cash reserves or even low yield investments as a defense against sequence of returns risk is something that's frequently recommended. But if you actually run simulations, you'll see that in the long term, these strategies rarely pan out. You're basically doing market timing, believing that you somehow know when you should be keeping money outside of the market. And we all know how well most investors do with market timing. All right. Well, couple of things here, Roger Scott. I appreciate the comment. And look, I agree with you. I don't think anyone, anybody that's looking historically would argue with you that you are going to beat the market by not being in it, right? That's just a reality of what it is. However, I would argue and or submit that based off of the thousands of retirees we talk to, regardless of how much money they have, and a lot of you that reach out to us are in a pretty good spot. Actually, a very good spot. Most of you have a couple $1 million. I really don't know if that many people, I could probably count on one hand, how many people, full gamut, 100% equity, understood the risk, understood the trade-off, said, you know what? My income's turning off tomorrow. I don't care. I'm going to be 100% equity. No cash alternatives. Just get after it, and I'm going to live off of that for income. Now, historically speaking, yeah, that's probably going to be the best bet. But as I always say, there is a mathematical side and there's a sleep at night emotional side of the equation. And I really don't care how much money you have unless you have so much money that it just will never even matter to you anyway. But if you're like most people, and that's what we're talking about here, we're generalizing. But I don't really know of many people that are going to be extremely comfortable or even remotely comfortable with being 100% all in with no backstop whatsoever. Jake, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, what is that Mike Tyson quote? It's like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the context is like, then you have to just fall on instinct. But regardless, I think that applies here, right? I mean, yes, of course, Roger, if you watch this channel a little bit longer and a few more videos, you will hear us say over and over and over again, equities are the way to build wealth, to outpace inflation. Those are your long-term assets. And absolutely, we should have, I don't want to say a bias toward, but we want to own equities by and large because they're going to outpace inflation, bond yields, cash yields, all of that. Full send, full agree on all of that. But the lived reality for most folks in retirement is not such that they can just weather a 15, 25, 30, 40% drop in their stock positions and feel okay about that. I don't know where Roger is in his investment or retirement career. I think if you retired after 2008 and have been, not entirely in not uninterrupted bull market since 2008, but pretty darn close. We've had very little disruption to this bull market other than 2023, a little bit of a hiccup in 2018 and obviously 2020 with COVID. But I think if we zoom out and look historically, we'll have more success, more return, a larger ending balance if we're 100% stocks. But most people can't make it through retirement, weathering the storms there or riding the roller coaster up and down without having something to backstop them and to know that that's going to be there for them if it really goes poorly.
Yeah, let me agree with Roger for a second,
Yeah.
and then I'll kind of back out into that too, because I think that's a very important point. I also don't want people to be too conservative because we have seen people where they're way too much in cash or cash alternatives where it's like, hey, you're ready for a 25-year bear market with basically how much money you have set aside in cash and cash alternatives.
We're usually the ones pushing people to have more equities.
Right. So don't hear what I'm not saying, Roger. I agree with you on that front. However, I would say that I think a lot of people have gotten maybe too comfortable with just what historically has happened the last couple of years. I mean, even with the little blips now with, in the beginning of this year, beginning of last year, people are like, oh my gosh, the market's actually going down. I can't believe this, right? And I say that kind of tongue in cheek and jokingly, but it's true, right? I mean, if you look at even a lot of people don't even remember 2018. The end of 2018 was pretty gnarly. And again, there was a couple other years in there that weren't all that amazing. But I think if we have a more prolonged bear market, the shift in that mentality might change a bit. But again, that's what it all comes back to, a plan. So I don't think anyone here is arguing with you. If anybody is, that you're going to beat the market by not being in it, I find that counterintuitive. I don't think anybody would say that. But
it's also not market timing, right?
No.
It's setting a portfolio with a strategic plan of how you're going to live on it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to push back too hard here, but like, that's not market timing. Market timing would be jumping in and out and trying to pick a specific period of time where you're going to put money in and then back it out and then put money in and back it out. If you're doing this with a plan of just backstopping if the market goes down and have rebalancing built into that plan with some rules, that's not the same thing as market timing.
Well, and in reality too, like even if you were, I'm not even saying like 60-40 or 50-50, right? Let's just say, for example, you had $2 million set aside and you spent $100,000 a year, hypothetically, right? Just for our easy math purpose. Let's call it $150,000. Let's call it that.
Yeah, it's getting saucy.
If you have 3 years of cash and cash alternatives set aside, you got $450,000 in either a mixed bag of money markets, short-term alternatives, things like that, and the rest of it's still in equities. I mean, it's still
pretty aggressive.
You're still fairly aggressive, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to always be that way. Like what happens if you flip on Social Security and then now you revert down to 2 years? So you have $300,000 in cash and cash alternatives. Social Security is covering the difference of that third year, right? There's a million different ways this can go, but case in point, I at least wanted to address that because I think the main question here that I'm really trying to answer is how much should I have or how much should I be thinking about having, if any, in cash or cash alternatives? And we talk about creating a bucket strategy. We've already hit on that a little bit here today. But that's the importance of having a plan that works with everything else. The other thing I would submit there too is having additional money in like a cash or cash alternative bucket can also be your dry powder for things like Roth conversions, can help you manage your income more, right? Like what happens if you have massive gains, which is, again, good problem to have, but there's just other things to consider in retirement planning that I think a lot of people don't get out ahead of. Well, look, we appreciate your 3 questions and comments down below. And if you have additional questions, we would love to do more episodes like this. These are actually some of our more favorite ones where we just answer your questions. So if you want those answered, then comment them down below. But if you have more specifics, you do want more of a prescriptive answer, maybe you're thinking, man, I have some of these questions, but I want help with the plan, then obviously we love to help you out with that. We have different planning options, whether it's a flat fee for advice only, or if you want us to help you manage everything, we can do either one of those. Click the link down below. We'd love to set up a time to chat with you through that too. Either way, we appreciate you watching. I'm Kyle Kuyat.
I'm Jake Gardner.
And we will see you next time.